Craig is hopping on now. There we go. Craig, if you message me when you get on here, that'd be good. There's a lot of people on here. Bailey, good to see you. Come on in. Hey, let's put in the chat where you guys are coming in tonight from. Where are you guys coming in from tonight? We got someone from Boston. There we go. Calgary. Oh, KC, New Zealand. Man, we are international tonight. We'll get started here in a couple minutes. San Diego, Grove, Oklahoma. That's by me. Keep coming on in. Oh, there's a picture of me in Kansas City not too long ago. All right. I, I do see that Craig is here. Welcome, Craig.
Blake, what's up, brother?
Aha, there we are. Good to see
Can
you,
you hear me
man.
okay? Can you
Oh
hear me
yeah.
okay?
I can hear you great, man.
Is this
So,
backlight too much or
no, well, we can see you. You just moved, so your chair looks good. There we go. People are still joining, then we'll officially get going in a minute
that
or
may be a
two
little
here.
bit better?
Oh yeah, there we go. Craig, are
That's
you
better.
normally in bed by right now?
No, I'm usually up for another hour or so.
Craig, do you remember that picture right there?
Of course I remember that. That's the Tom Brokaw office.
Have you done any more filming in there?
You know what? We did something for a podcast, or we did some reading in there, but we use literally just about every day someone's shooting in there. And it's so funny because that was when I started, that was like Tom Brokaw's majestic office. And
You told me that he wasn't that happy that y'all turned it into a studio.
no, no, he was not. I think he wanted to be turned into some sort of like museum to his broadcast journalism, but oh well.
All right.
How are you?
Doing good, man. Still helping people write their legacy letter and man, it's been good. It's been really good since the Today Show. And so I appreciate you making that happen.
This
So
is such an elaborate production here. Like, who does this? Do you do this yourself?
yeah. What part do you mean? What is the elaborate part? We're jumping on a Zoom call together. We're about to go through a
No, I mean,
workshop.
I'm seeing slides and graphics and no,
Oh
this
yeah,
is
this is just our warm-up slides here before we get going. As people are joining in.
how are
Um,
you? How are
I,
things?
I'm doing good. So when I saw you, we had Gracie Kate, Bo, and Brooks, and then we just found out we're pregnant with a fourth. So we got another boy coming in August. Uh,
Congratulations.
yeah. So hey, and then
Wow.
I got your book in the mail, and I've already got it 2 days ago. Already read it to my kids, and man, they love. It was fun for me to read it, and they loved it, and I was able to like, hey, see the picture of that guy right there? Like, I know that guy.
Sounds like I should have sent you two copies.
Well, I have the link that we're gonna put it out there tonight for
Oh, that's cool,
everybody.
man.
Here,
It
let's
was
see.
fun. It really was a labor of love.
Here, let me officially get us going and then let's talk about that. Okay.
Okay. Oh,
All
so
right.
no, when you click us in, it's me, you,
There's a
and
bunch of people on here watching us right now.
all right. And background's okay?
Yeah, it's all good. All right, here we go. Let me play this video, then we'll get going.
It's one of my favorite Dad's Got the stories we've done so far. He has used that to help so far tens of thousands of dads.
I think he's just getting started.
A letter is that voice, whether you can hear it or you can read it. And so that is a gift.
All right, I do
It's
want
one of
to,
mine.
well, hold on, officially welcome everybody to our legacy letter workshop tonight. We got people coming in from all over the country and the world. I'm really excited about tonight because we have our special guest with us, Craig Melvin, the guy who put me on the Today Show, and probably the reason that a lot of you guys are here tonight. When I say guys, I know there's ladies here and moms as well. So tonight we're going to spend a little bit of time with Craig. And we're going to talk to him, and he's got a great new book that is coming out soon, and we're going to talk about that. We will do the legacy letter workshop, so I will guide you all through writing your legacy letter tonight. And then at the very end, we'll talk about the legacy letter vision, where we're going, and then we'll have some Q&A for those of you who have any questions. And so you all know Craig Melvin. He is on the Today Show, NBC Today news anchor. And I am just so grateful for Craig and what he's doing. He is obviously great at his job, but one of the things that he values the most is being a great dad. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. He does a segment called Dad's Got This, which he invited me to be on. And so I just love that he's highlighting dads out there. And then we're also going to be talking about his new book, I'm Proud of You. Craig, how are you doing, man?
You know what? I'm doing pretty well. Doing pretty well, all things considered for a Thursday evening. All is well here in Connecticut. My kids had spring break last week, and we went down to Universal Studios and the water park because they're at peak theme park age, Blake, and so we did Universal and Islands of Adventure and Volcano Bay and now I need a vacation from my vacation.
Oh man, that's a line from What About Bob? Uh, so
Facts.
so when you're down there, are people walking up to you, or do they recognize you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a couple people. Here's the problem is when they don't recognize you. That's when we have issues. That means no one's watching TV anymore. So, yeah, there are a few folks who came up, but by and large, thankfully, like when you're with your kids, people are pretty respectful and they don't want to come up and talk about that episode of Dateline that they saw 3 weeks ago about this woman from Ohio. Uh, so that's a good thing.
I know that's what I was. It must be on some like your kids are proud of you, right? And I don't know you're proud of them, but they're proud of you. But then there has to be this little bit of like, okay, Dad, everyone's trying to talk to you. Like, we want your attention. How do you battle
Correct.
that?
You know what? It's funny because my kids, I think that most parents probably deal with this. It doesn't matter what you do for work, your kids could care less. Like you could be president of the United States, you could be a rock star, you could be a broadcast journalist who's on television every morning, you could be a writer, whatever you do, your kids don't care. They all they care about is what you can do for them in that moment. Like what's the obstruction that's causing you to not be able to pay full attention to them. So it's funny we're having this conversation because today was actually bring your kid to work day, and so
Yeah.
you can go down this rabbit hole on the interwebs. But my son came in with me for work, and so he had to get up at like 4 a.m. Which, by the way, if you're 10 years old, getting up at 4 a.m. like it's a death sentence. So
Right.
he gets up, he's got his pillow, he's oh my God, Dad, I gotta take a sleep. But he's had enough rest that he can't get in the car and sleep immediately. So he stays up, then he goes to sleep, then he wakes up, then he goes to sleep, and I've got a pretty rigid morning routine in the car that I had to throw out of the window this morning because of him. And then we get there, and I've given him a tour and introduced him to everyone, and this guy, like, he wants to like hang out in my dressing room and watch cartoons and eat the cupcakes that they bring in for Bring Your Kids to Work Day. Like he could have cared less, but that's part of the joy, right, Blake?
Well, the rest of us, when we take our kids to work, we maybe don't work as hard, but you're on TV. Like people are counting on you to perform. So I'm sure it's a little different.
Yeah, yeah, I guess it is. It's it is a little different. It is a little different. And during the pandemic, especially when we had the studio in the house, it was tricky because I would have to sort of become a recluse for a few hours every day down in the basement. But the kids, because they really didn't have anything else to do, they would watch some of the programming. And a couple of times over the course of the year and a half, they would pop in unannounced, unexpected, unwanted, usually, and they would just want to say hello to America. But no, no. To your point, it's different. But one of the things I discovered this morning, actually, we were watching. I get in usually about 6 o'clock, and I in my dressing room, I've got a screen, and I sort of scroll through the day's events from different channels around the world. And my son, who's in the fourth grade now, he's 10, he starts asking me like legitimate questions about things that we're watching that are happening in the news, including the trial of the former president. And he said, quote, what's Trump on trial for? And I had to figure out a way to explain that to a fourth grader without getting into all the details that would lead to more questions. And then the next story, I kid you not, was about the war in Gaza and Israel, and he asked about that. And he's been fascinated by the war in Ukraine for 2 years. So it's 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:15, maybe by this point, and I'm being peppered with questions from a 10-year-old about world events. And that's usually the time that I reserve for headspace, um, mindfulness. I journal a little bit, and all of a sudden, my son is asking really impressive questions about things that are happening in the news. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a father at 6 a.m. I'm not used to this.
Oh yeah. And then there's the answer we give to a friend, and then there's the answer we give to our kids and trying to navigate
Correct.
all that.
And it doesn't help when he can actually listen to the broadcast. And at one point, he's like, "Who's Stormy Daniels?" And I'm like, it's a person who's part of the story."
Well, my 8-year-old, she started reading really well in the past year. And so now it's like, oh, she can read. And then
Oh yeah.
she's sitting next to me, she could read my text messages. It's like,
Oh
yeah, okay,
no.
got to be a little careful here. It's like, hey, don't read that. Not that I'm texting bad things, just
Correct. Correct. I hear what you say.
So, all right. So, Craig, question, and I kind of already know the answer because I read your book, Pops, um, which is a great book about
Thank you.
you and your dad. But you are trying to be a good dad. You're trying to help other people, motivate other people to be a good dad. So, where does this motivation come from for you?
I think for me, and I know it varies from person to person. I've always believed that you can be motivated just as much by a bad example as you can be motivated by a good example, and in some cases even more so. And my dad growing up, he wasn't the kind of dad that I wanted. I'd watched a lot of the Cosby Show, and Dr. Huxtable became sort of a role model. And even before that, when I was a kid, like Black and White in the mornings, like Leave It to Beaver was on. So Ward Cleaver, like I'd sort of romanticized fatherhood. And I'd had this idea in my head based on movies and TV shows and some stories of what a father should be. And my dad, he wasn't that. And I had developed a fair amount of resentment, anger, sadness over the years because of that. And then all of a sudden, you get to be a man of a certain age, and you realize, for me, it was journalism that helped because we started to talk about addiction differently. We started to treat addiction differently. And my father was an addict for years, and we didn't know it at the time because that wasn't the language that we used. But I had these expectations of my dad that were wholly unrealistic. WHOLLY, wholly unrealistic. Because, and I write about this in the book that you mentioned, my first book, my dad didn't even know who his dad was until he was 13. My father was born in a federal prison in West Virginia. And so the fact that he even lived in the house with us and provided for us, that was a win for him.
Mhm.
And so this idea that I had that he was going to be emotionally available, that was a little silly because if you can't see something, then it makes it really hard to be that thing. Like if you can't see it, you can't be it. And
Yeah.
so when I got older, I was like, oh God. And I really my we were estranged for a while, and all of a sudden I started doing these stories about addiction and other things. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. My dad was an addict. And so long story short, he and we reconciled. I checked him into an inpatient facility. He got the help that he needed for probably 15, 20 years. And the relationship that we have now is precisely the kind of relationship that I wanted to have when I was a kid. But but his grandchildren now, they all call him Pop Pop. Like to them, like Pop Pop's like the best thing since sliced bread. They have no idea. Like the 45 years that we knew it, but it's magical. Like it's magical. And I write about it in the book, but one of the takeaways for me, at least, you should never give up on someone. And my dad, he got clean, he got sober when he was 67.
Mhm.
67. And now
Yeah.
when he comes up for visits, he's out like, shooting hoops with my son or throwing the football in the backyard, and he's well into his 70s. My brother and I were like, we stand there and we're like, who the hell is this? Who's this And then he's got the audacity occasionally to reprimand us for being too hard on the kids. And I'm like, you didn't even talk to us in 1989. And now you're like, oh, you shouldn't raise your voice at your children. So it's amazing, man. It really is. That's a long answer to a short question. I apologize.
No, that was great. And I think it's, that a message that a lot of people need to hear, a message of hope. Like, don't give up on the
No,
people, don't give up on our parents. Or there's
no.
some people right now with some children in some situations, and it's like, yeah, there might be in a situation, but don't give up hope. Like they're still working through it.
But it really is, if you not to sound sappy, um, but it's kind of at the end of the day, if you really think about it objectively, it's kind of all you have at certain points in your life. And whether you're a person of faith or not, like even if you're not a person of faith, like there's always hope. There's hope that that person that you care about, that person that you love, whether it's a child, a spouse, a sibling, a parent, whatever, there's always this hope that you know what, they'll get better. I can help them. I can try to help them get better, or I can watch. But like if you don't have hope, that is that's a terrible existence. But like when you just resign yourself to the fate of the world, hang it
Yeah.
up.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And that's what my dad's letter did for me that I read a couple hours after he drowned. I mean, my life was like, crashing in on me. I'm like, what in the world? I couldn't even imagine a future. And then I get this letter and it's like, it was hope. It's like, all right, I can do this. I can make it.
Well, that's what
Um,
your project provides for a lot of folks, which is why I'm on tonight. Like it really is such a fantastic idea. But it's also so analog. Like that's why I love it. Like we're on the Zoom talking about writing letters. It's so comical.
So your dad, like he must be really, really proud of you, like for all that you're doing. And then you must be proud of him too, as well.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I I am proud of him, and I do know that he's proud of me because he tells me. But for a long time, I didn't know that. And when I sat down to write this book, I um, I had to interview him for several hours. And part of the interview process was just asking questions for just ad nauseum. And I during the course of the interview, I found out that he watches the show every day. And I'm on for 3 straight hours, Blake. And my dad, he watches every morning. And he said something to me about it, some show that we had done a few weeks before. And I said to him, I was like, Pops, you saw that? You watched that? He's like, of course. I watch every morning. I was like, what? He's like, I've always watched it in the morning. I had no idea because my dad being my dad, he would never say that. Like he would never like
Yeah.
now my mom, of course, she'll text me during the show. Uh, but no, dad,
What are her texts? What are that? Why'd you say that?
she'll text, this is not an exaggeration, Blake. She'll be like, hey, didn't you wear that tie last week? Or this morning when her grandson was on, is Dell coming back on? What time is he coming back on? Or if I disappear for like 15 minutes from like a menopause segment, she'll be like, "Where did you leave? Where'd you go?" Or if it's a cooking segment, she'll be like, how was it really? How'd that sandwich taste?" So it's the mom
She
she gives
she
you the
knows she knows she has the personal hotline there that she can reach
correct,
you, and she's gonna, you know, take advantage of you and take advantage in a good way and not let you forget who her mom is.
correct, correct.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this book. I'm proud of you. So at what point did you decide you're going to write a children's book? And then what was maybe your inspiration to write this book? Which, by the way, thank you for sending it to me. I've already read it to my kids twice. It's not coming out for a couple more weeks. I've already read it to my kids twice, and they loved it. It was like perfect dialogue, like the things that you wrote in there, because you're really focusing on the character and like not like I'm proud of you when you fail and you keep going, like all that. And I was like, yes, and yeah, it was great pictures there. So then it was so like all of those examples are true with my children right now. All the things you wrote about for your kids. And so then I was able to say to my kids, like, I'm proud of you for these same reasons. I don't know. Was that what you were trying to do with this book, Craig?
No, that's exact. So after I wrote the first book about, you know, estrangement and addiction and the complexities of family and more specifically the father-son dynamic, I wanted to do something a little lighter. And the publisher was like, "Have you ever thought about a children's book?" And I was like, "No, not really." They were like, "Well, you should think about it. Like, what would you write about?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I would probably just write about being a dad and like the joys of fatherhood and sort of an extension of the series that you were a part of. That part of Dad's Got This, and so it was born from that. And then I sort of sat down one weekend and I started, as any writer will tell you, sort of the best ideas come from this sort of this I call it this Virginia Woolf approach, where it's sort of stream of conscious, and you're just writing random stuff down about things that excite you or inspire you, or just observations that you make. And I had at that particular point, if I remember correctly, he had either mastered tying his shoe or made like one of his first like shots on an 8 foot rim. And I was like, damn, this is cool. Like just being able to like see something for the first time, like witnessing something that would become obviously, fairly pedestrian in no time to him, but to see them master it for the first time, like a front row seat, you're watching and you're like, oh my, that's actually kind of cool. And so I had a conversation with my book editor about it because he was like, "What are your ideas?" And I was like, "Well, this might sound stupid, but like he does all this little stuff, and like he tries for a while, and then like I get to see him like do it really well for the first time. I'm like, I think that might be a book." And to his credit, he was like, that actually could be a book. And so that was the impetus. And then after that, I really wanted to capture our family dynamic. We're a mixed race family. My 10-year-old son and my now 7.5-year-old daughter. I started writing the book almost 3 years ago now, but um, if you have, and you do, and a lot of folks on this Zoom probably do as well. When you have multiple children, the reality is occasionally they like each other. On special occasions, they love each other. 75% of the time, they hate each other. And it's all you can do to keep one of them from stabbing the other in the heart. And so I wanted to celebrate even the occasional act of kindness. And so I write about that in the book as well. Like when he has like this moment where he realizes his sister is not a demon child, and is not out to sabotage his existence. I read about that because it's like, when you're a parent, like you're just every day, you just put on your armor, you go to war, you try to keep them alive. You want to make sure that they don't either screw up someone else's child, screw up themselves, or as they get older, get arrested. Like that's the mission every day. Every day, that's the mission. And so I wanted to celebrate just some of those micro victories, not the macro stuff, because we all do the macro stuff, the graduations and the weddings, and yeah, okay, yeah, we all get that. That's wonderful. That's an easy celebration. But the smaller stuff, I contend that needs to be celebrated just as much.
Um, yeah, absolutely. Like it's really easy to catch our kids when they're messing up, right? And point that out to them, but to catch them doing right. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're
Yes,
doing with this book. Hey, that was right. That was good. Keep doing
right,
that.
and
I'm proud of you.
celebrate that. Like there's a part in the book, not to be shameless here,
Oh,
but there's a part. This is weird, I know, because
no,
this
we
is
see it.
it's like we're back in COVID days. But there's a part here where he's extending a soccer ball, and I write, "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of your soul. You pull up others with you." Like my son is really big on making sure that his friends like feel okay, which might seem like a small thing, but when I think when we live in this era of tribalism and meanness and just I call it anonymous vitriol. Um, and my boy, granted he's only 10, he could go sideways at any moment. I get that. But right now, one of the things that he really seems to cherish and value is like being kind to his friends and making sure that like all of his friends, boys, girls, black, white, like they feel included. Case in point, Blake, about 2 weeks ago, he comes home. To be clear, we're not Jewish, and my son has made a bunch of Jewish friends at school, and he said to me, he's like, um, oh God, what's the boy's name? Shoot, not. Oh gosh, it'll come to me in a second. Anyway, he's like, he invited us over for Seder. one of his friends. I've never been to a Seder. I'm familiar with Seder and Passover and he's like, we're I told him that we would be coming over for Seder. I was like, oh, well, that's kind, son. I thought it was a passing, fleeting thing. Um, and every other day for 2 weeks, he's like, Dad, don't forget, we've got Seder on, Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. And this is gonna bother me to no end. Hang on, I've got to figure out this boy's name. Stand by.
He's coming back.
Don't go anywhere.
I'm curious where you're going to find out the name. Oh, your son. You're gonna ask him. How are you guys doing out there? You guys getting primed, getting ready to write your legacy letter? Of course, it's fun to hear Craig and see him on TV every morning, but behind the
Ru-
scenes here. Oh, you got
Ruben
it.
Turk. Ruben Turk. Oh my God, I was going to drive me crazy. I know that seems weird to all of you who are watching this on Zoom, but I'm trying to stave off early onset. Ruben Turk. So the Turks invited us over, and like his mom reached out. And so, anyway, long story short, we're over there night before last. We're 3 hours in on the Seder, a couple glasses of wine, and I look over at my boy, and he is smiling ear to ear because he's sitting next to his buddy Ruben, participating in this religious tradition that clearly means so much to him and his family. And I was proud in that moment. Like if I had experienced that before I'd written the book, that would have been in the book. Like it's those little things, Blake.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you for writing this book. And so now our call to action, everybody on this call, I put the link in the chat, but this book is coming out on May 7th. I think that's
Huh.
right. And man, we want this book to go to the top of the charts, and we're going to play a little piece of that. And so buy it for yourself, buy it for your friends, not just for Craig's sake, although we're grateful to Craig, but everyone who orders this book will be blessed as they
Amen.
read it to their children, grandchildren, or to be honest, I'm sitting here thinking about Father's Day. Like, man, what a great Father's Day gift.
Father's Day graduation too, by the way, Blake.
Graduation. Oh, yeah. Great gift to give. So, is there any other call to action there? We've got the chat or the link in the
No.
chat.
I just love what you're doing, and I love that you got so many people who are clearly excited about it as well. Like I just, I think we live in a time where it's just paramount to celebrate the good, and that's what you're doing. That's what I'm trying to do as well. Like we're celebrating the good, man. Celebrating the good. How many
Well,
letters are you up to now?
man, a lot more since I was on the show, but we're still going. And my wife and I had a great time up in New York City. And we got to go up there and film during December. And I'm already thinking like, man, Craig needs to have us back up there and have us on the show again, and we'll do an
Come
update.
on, anytime.
Craig, I met with a guy today. First time I met with him, someone connected us 2 months ago, and he knew I did someone with letters. And I'm sitting there telling my story. He's in Kansas City. And he goes, man, I think you have a competitor out there. Like that's what he's thinking. He tells me later, like someone else is doing what you're doing. And then I tell him, I get to the point in the story, and I said, and then I got to be on the Today Show. And he goes, I've seen you before. He goes, I watched that episode. My daughter was graduating high school, and then I wrote her a letter, and I said the 3 points that you said. I love you. I'm proud of you. I believe in you. And I wrote her, and man, it was beautiful. He's like, my daughter was in tears, and he goes, I watched that episode or that segment. And I'm like, I don't know how many people out there were like that. And I was like, man, this is pretty crazy. You're telling me this today because I'm about to see Craig tonight.
I don't
And
believe in
so,
accidents. I don't believe in accidents. But
yeah,
if you think about it objectively, and obviously you have, and most of the other folks in the Zoom, I'm sure have as well. When you say those things to your child, I'm proud of you. I love you. I believe in you. Like those are powerful statements. Powerful statements. So I'm just that's why it's called I'm proud of you.
well, I appreciate you, Craig. We're gonna let you go to bed
Thank you.
because I know you got an early morning and we'll be watching you in the morning. But man, thanks for giving up some time with us away from your family to hang out with us tonight. and we'll order some books, man.
Thank
We'll get the
you.
word
I
out.
I can't say hello to everyone on the Zoom, obviously, but I see a guy named Bill Leach. Hello, Bill. Hello, Kelby Sue. Hello, Kathy Martelli and Grace Petman and Dean Bricky. And I love this name, Creston Inderid. I can't even pronounce the last name, but hello to you and Bobby, who went to the bathroom apparently, and Stephen Colson and Daryl Kostya. I can't do it. And Marilyn Brock and Richard Fingerman and Lori Duckett and Linda Guadney. Mwah. So a big hello to the folks who are just on my screen. I don't have everyone. So thank you, Blake. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Craig. All right. We'll see you, man. Have a good one.
See you in the morning, brother.
All
Bye-bye.
right. See you. Okay, well, that was pretty awesome and really special for me to get to interview Craig, especially since, as you guys know, it brought me on the Today Show. And so, anyway, that was pretty cool. Well, I'm pretty excited for this next part of our time together where we're going to get to, um, I'll get to guide you guys through writing your legacy letter. And so let me kick us off here. So tonight's workshop is sponsored by Giftology, and I know a lot of y'all are here because of John Ruhlin and Giftology, and I love what they're about, and they are all about relationships. And so we're going to talk more about them at the end, especially for those of you that are in business. Their services are amazing, and we'll talk about that. So tonight we're going to walk through the intro, the apology section, that I love you, that I'm proud of you, that I believe in you, the memories, the advice, the closing paragraph. And so I will share with you each the why and the how behind each of these sections. You guys can be taking notes as I am talking. Uh, I, 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 I tell everyone in this time, you're probably not going to walk away with a finished letter. Some of you are going to take, but I do recommend take as much notes as you can, and I will say you'll be equipped to write this legacy letter. Now, I said that a couple weeks ago, and at the end, this guy held up his letter and said, "Hey, I finished my letter." So there is hope for some of you out there to write it now, but some of you are going to, okay, you've got their notes, and then you're gonna have to go wrestle through some things of what you want to write. Um, okay, I know most of you here probably know my story, but let me start us off with that real quickly just to remind us how we got here. Um, when I was 19 years old, I got a call from my mom. I was a freshman at the University of Arkansas, and she said, "Blake, we're taking a family vacation to Hawaii." And I said, "Heck yeah, let's go." And so it was a few months later that we boarded the plane. And the first day there, we decided to go snorkeling. And so my mom, my sister, my brother, my grandmother were all on the beach. And then it was just me and my dad out in the water. And I have to share with you all that there was nowhere else in the world that I wanted to be than right there with my dad. I was really fortunate. I had a really good dad. He was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There was moments growing up where I was like, "Hey, that's my dad." And then there was other moments where I was like, "Oh shoot, that's my dad." So maybe some of y'all can relate. Um, but overall, my dad was my hero. So my dad was a hospital administrator, but long before I was born, my dad was known as a football player. So he is drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, which we do have the NFL draft on tonight, and maybe some of you guys have that on in the background. I'm glad that you're here. But my dad's main claim to fame is that he was Terry Bradshaw's tight end at Louisiana Tech. And so they were best friends and roommates. And you can imagine some of the stories that came out of those years. My dad caught Bradshaw's first ever collegiate touchdown pass. I have this really amazing picture of my dad and Bradshaw and President Nixon in the Oval Office right before they went in the draft in 1970. If y'all remember, that's when Bradshaw went #1 to the Steelers. Huge deal out of Louisiana Tech, small college. My dad was a very humble guy, so he hardly ever told anyone that he was Terry Bradshaw's tight end. I told everybody. It was my claim to fame growing up. And so there we were out in the water, and we just kept going further and further out. And the further we went out, the bigger the waves got, the current got stronger, and it got deeper. And there was a moment where I realized I don't see my dad anymore, and I panicked. I was out there alone. And so I'm scanning the water looking for him. These huge waves are coming and I'm trying to find him. And then I saw him. And I remember thinking, okay, good. There's my dad. And except not good because my dad was struggling. And I could tell he was still treading water, but he looked right at me and he said, I need help. And my dad had this really big, deep, booming voice, but this cry for help was more like this soft whimper. And so I swam to him as quickly as I could. But by the time I reached him, he was underneath the water. And so I dove down, I wrapped my arms around my dad, and I brought him back up to the surface. And I began to swim with him. I had a long ways to go. And I got to a point where I thought, man, I'm not going to make it anymore. And in that moment, a nearby snorkeler showed up and began to help me. And then the lifeguards showed up. They saw what was happening and they got him on a surfboard. They brought him in and they began to do CPR. And as I stood there next to him, I did the only thing that I knew to do in that moment. I cried out to God, God, would you please save my dad's life? And I really thought that in any moment that my dad was going to come to, that it was going to be like the movies where he's going to flicker his eyes, the water's going to come out of his mouth. It never happened. And so my dad drowned that day. And it went from one of the best days of my life to the worst in a matter of minutes. And I'm standing there next to my dad's body. Like, what the heck just happened? Like, we were out in the water just a few moments ago having the time of our life, and now my dad is gone forever. And I began to ask myself some questions. How are we going to make it without my dad? How am I going to make it? So fast forward a couple hours, and now we're back in the condo. And I'm sitting in the back bedroom on the edge of the bed, still just in shock. And my mom appeared in the doorway and she said, Blake, I have found something in your dad's briefcase, something that I know he was going to give you on this trip. And she walked across the room and she handed me a letter from my dad. And I began to read this letter, and it was everything I needed in that moment. Apparently, my dad had been working on it for a couple months. He had no idea that he was about to die when he wrote it. Had no idea that this would be his final words to me. As I read it, it was as if my dad was still there with me. I could hear his voice. A sense of peace came over me. I felt hope. And then don't tell me that my dad didn't love me. My dad took the time to write this letter. My dad loved me. My dad was a man of faith. And then so as I got to the last line of this letter, I wasn't surprised, but I do believe God allowed him to write it. He wrote, as you're being faithful to God and to the Bible, you're often going to find yourself in the minority here on earth. But I assure you that in heaven, you'll be in the majority. Love your dear old dad. And I remember reading that thinking, I'm going to see my dad again. And so I cannot imagine my life without this letter. This letter helped me grieve. It helped me as I look back, and it was really a fork in the road for my life. I could have walked away from that bitter at life, bitter at God. I could have done some things to try to numb out the pain that I was feeling, and I didn't do any of those things. Actually, and I would say over the next 12 months, grew more in my faith, grew closer to my family, my friends, than any other 12-month stretch in my life. I had some professional counselors tell me, Blake, you have grieved this really well compared to most people. I attribute that to my dad's letter. And so then I graduated from college, got married, and started having kids. And through all that, there's been amazing highs and there's been some really low lows. And in all those moments, I would find myself going back to my dad's letter. and allowing him to speak to me. And every time my dad will get me back on track. And so then it was a few years ago when my children were even younger. They're currently 8, 6, and 3. And if you heard me earlier say we got another one on the way, so we got a fourth one. It'll be coming in August. But I went to write them a letter, and I saw how difficult it was to write this letter, but how amazing it felt to have this letter done. And so it was through that experience, and I kept meeting a couple people who had received a life-changing letter from their dad, and it just hit me one day, like, what am I doing here with my life? We got to help more people get a letter from their dad. And so that's where our mission started, to help 1 million dads write at least one well-written, meaningful, lasting legacy letter. We included moms in that pretty soon after that. Uh, can't leave the moms out. And so for the last 3.5, 4 years now, we've been helping people write this legacy letter. And from the beginning, it was like, okay, if we're going to write this letter, man, what is the letter that all of our children, what are the words that our children need to hear from us? I mean, if we put it all in one letter, and I knew that most people, they don't have the time to go research like all the things that need to go into this letter. And it's so overwhelming. And so I knew we had to put together a program and a process to help people write this letter. And then pretty soon there was people signing up, individuals, and then some financial advisors said, man, we need this for our clients, put together a package. And some of you are here today because your advisor purchased this for you. Um, and some business owners said, man, we need this for our employees. And these doors just kept opening up, including being on the Today Show. Um, and so the question that I have for you today, and you can put this in the chat. What is your motivation to write this legacy letter? Why did you show up today? There's so many great reasons to write this letter. Some people come into this and they would say, on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'm like a 9 or a 10 with my children. There was a 90-year-old lady on the call a couple weeks ago, and she's like, man, I'm getting close to the end. I have a good relationship with my kids, and I just want them to know forever how much I love them and how much I feel about them. um, some of you might be coming into this and you're more of like a 5 out of 10 in the relationship with your kids, or maybe they're in a situation right now. And or maybe you're more like a 0 or a 1. And there's a lot of people that come into this that would say, man, I'm experiencing parental alienation, or I'm currently estranged from my children. There was a dad working on this not too long ago, and he said, I haven't talked to my daughter in 4 years, and this letter gives me hope that she'll come home. And so maybe you're in that spot right now. I don't know where you're at. I don't know how old your kids are. Maybe some of you are like a dad recently who was writing to his newborn. No, actually unborn son, first son. And I was like, yeah, you got to get this letter done. One, for the rest of your life, your son will know how much you loved him and how proud you were of him and how much you believed him even before he was born. But you're not promised another day. Your son is not promised to have you. And so you got to get this letter done. So I'll have some words written down from you. Let me share with you um, my screen. And I think I don't want anyone to wait on writing this letter, this legacy letter. The first thing it does, it delivers hope. Man, I love talking about hope. You can measure the amount of hope that somebody has in their life. We could go measure the amount of hope your children have, or the hope that your organization has. And so we want to be the best dealers of hope that we can be. Hope is like one person said, like rocket fuel in someone's life. It's when you give up hope and you lose hope, that's when you give up. We want to we want to be good dealers of hope. And we're going to do that with this legacy letter. This legacy letter, it builds confidence by winning the heart. And so our children are begging us, Dad, Mom, come win my heart. And this letter is going to help you win their heart in a way that you may never have before. We work hard to provide for our families, but we have to go to battle to win their hearts. And some of you, as you work on this letter, you're going to realize, like, hey, this is a battle. Like, I am in a battle right now to finish this letter. This letter is return toable. Um, I can't tell you how many times I've returned to my dad's letter. I was talking to a guy recently. He had finished his letter. He was in a group like this. It was a private group, and finished it last year. Gave it to his 10-year-old daughter. Went on a trip with her, like a one-on-one trip, father-daughter trip. He said it was awesome. Gave her the letter. She kind of was like received it. Was like, okay, good letter. But then he said just a couple months ago, his daughter and his wife were just like really kind of button heads. Like he said, man, they both have strong personalities. And so we had to keep disciplining her and sending her up to her room. Well, one day she comes down and she has like a complete attitude change. And we're like, man, what happened to her? And she started to apologize for her actions. And so anyway, she goes back upstairs and I went back up to tuck her in. And she said, Daddy, I came back up to my room after I getting in trouble and I saw that letter you wrote me. And I read that letter again and I realized I haven't been acting right and I need to go apologize to mommy. And so that's the power of this legacy letter that we're writing to our children. You don't know when it's going to hit them at the right moment. Maybe the moment you give it to them, it might be later on. Okay, real quickly, before we jump into the intro section of the letter, how to write a good letter. Number one, you want to be authentic. You want to share your feelings. The more feelings that you can share, the more you can give them insight into what you're thinking, the better and the stronger the letter will be. And you're not trying to write a letter to all the kids of the world or New York Times bestseller. You're trying to write a letter to your kids. They want to hear your heart. So be authentic. Number two, write the way you talk. You don't have to use big flowery words here. Like just however you talk, man, that's the way you want to write. Number three, longer is not necessarily better. And so some of you could probably write a novel. We're not trying to write a novel here. We're trying to write something they can read in one sitting. And let me say this. I'm going to say this to try to take the pressure off. As you look at each one of these sections, if you come up with one sentence for each one of these sections of the letter, you're going to have a powerful letter and you're going to have more than what most people get from their parents. So it does not have to be a super long letter. And I think it was Mark Twain that wrote in a letter to somebody. He said, I apologize. I didn't have enough time to make this letter more concise. That being said, most people probably end up writing like a 2, 3, 4 page letter somewhere in there. Number four, we are not aiming for perfect. We are aiming for a finished letter. So I don't know how many perfectionists we have on the call today. Uh, Richard Fingerman, I don't know. I saw a head nod over there. Richard and the rest of you perfectionists, you're never gonna have a perfect letter. And in your aim to have a perfect letter, and let me just say you're unfinished trying to be perfect letter is not going to have near the impact of someone's finished letter that wasn't as perfect. And so take the pressure off. It's never going to be perfect. You might tell yourself, hey, I'm writing more than one of these. This is the first one. I got to get something down, but there's going to be another one coming that's going to maybe have the things I missed in this first letter. But we are just going for a finished letter. Number five, set a completion date. And so those of you that are on this call saying, you know what, we got graduation coming up. And you say, I'm going to do this for graduation night. When are you probably going to finish this letter? Like the night before graduation night, you're going to be up at midnight working on it. So set that completion date. Tell somebody, your spouse, a friend, your kids. And some people tell their kids, hey, this letter's coming. And I think that's pretty good accountability right there. Why would you not tell them? You're going to finish it, right? What are you scared of? Okay, let's jump into the intro paragraph. And let me answer this question before we get going. Are you writing one letter? If you got multiple kids, are you writing one letter or are you writing more than one? So some people decide to write one letter that's addressed to all of them. You can do this. And then as we get to different sections, like on the I'm proud of you, you want to say unique things to each one. So you'll just have different paragraphs. If you decide to do separate letters, it's okay to have similar or the same paragraph. Like you might have the same intro paragraph for everybody. You might have the advice. We're going to come up with 4 or 5 pieces of advice. It's okay to have the same advice for everybody, or 3 out of the 5 might be the same, and then 2 unique. Okay. So the intro paragraph, you really want to answer this question. You can imagine them receiving this letter. And let me just acknowledge that there might be some people on this call who are not writing to their children. You might be writing to a friend, a sibling. Some people write this to their parents and as an appreciation letter. And I mean, if you do that, at some point you should do that if your parents are still alive, because they will absolutely love it. And so I will be talking as if you were writing to your children, but you can adapt it to whoever you're writing it to. So the first question you want to answer is, why are you writing this letter? Because you can imagine them, they've received it, they're opening up and they're like, okay, what is this that I'm about to read here? Like, is dad dying here? Like, who knows what they're going to be thinking? And so you want to answer this question. Why are you writing this letter? And so whatever the answer is, answer this for yourself. Whatever it is, that's what you'll simply communicate to them. One dad said it like this: I've never been shy of saying how much I love you. I hope those words always mean something to you. This letter is my way of expressing the depth and meaning of my love for you. One thing I've always believed is there's no accidents in life. Recently, Jeff, my friend and financial advisor, introduced me to a program called the Legacy Letter Challenge. I've been searching for a way to express many thoughts and feelings to you, but I was struggling to find the right approach. This seems like a great start. I did intentionally pick this um, because he, first of all, he talks about how he knew to write this letter, who encouraged him, Jeff. People ask me all the time, how did your dad like all of a sudden write this letter to you? And the answer is I don't know. I don't know why he wrote that letter. I don't know if there was somebody who encouraged him to. If there was somebody, I would love to go thank that person. um, the second thing, it's up to you whether you want to say that you went through the Legacy Letter Challenge, or that you attended this workshop, or that you got some help. Here's my thoughts on it. There is no shame in saying that you got some help writing this letter. It's the exact opposite. Because the things that you really care about, whether it's at work, your hobbies, your golf game, whatever it is, you get some help on. And so what are you really saying? Hey, this letter really matters to me. You really matter to me. And I wanted to make sure that I got it right. And if I were you, I would not shy away of even mentioning that you attended this workshop. I mean, imagine how many people in the country right now would love to know that their mom, their dad, their loved one took time out of their day to attend a workshop, to learn how to write them a letter to communicate their heart to them. Like, you know how many people would die to have somebody doing that for them right now. So what you guys are doing right now is so special and so amazing and so awesome. And so I commend you for that. I mean, can y'all imagine with me if every person in your community was doing what y'all are doing right now, and everybody in your community or your state or this country was about to receive a letter like this? Like, we live in a different world if everybody, I believe that, if everyone was getting a letter like this. So what y'all are doing is special. Okay, that is the intro paragraph. So then the next paragraph that we're going to work on, the next section of the letter, is the apology section. So here's the thing that's true for all of us on this call. We have not been perfect. We have not been perfect in our relationship. We have not been the perfect mom, the perfect dad. And we know it, and our kids definitely know it. And so what can happen in a relationship over time is there can be a wall that can be built between us and them. And you all are about to write some pretty amazing things. And you want to make sure that they receive those amazing things. And it's going to be hard to receive it if there's a wall there blocking it. And so one of the things that we can do to break down that wall is to apologize. And some of you know that there's a wall right now with your children. And some of you, there is a wall and you don't even know it. But if I went and asked your children right now, they would probably be able to tell me. And so we're going to do a simple apology. It also sets an amazing tone of humility. Like, we're not coming into this letter saying, oh yeah, I've got everything figured out, I know how to do it. No, we're coming in with some humility. So You could write something like this. Before I share with you a few important things, I want you to know that I know I've made mistakes as your dad or your mom. And for those times that I've come up short, I'm sorry. And that's a pretty powerful couple sentences. Like most people are not getting an apology from their dad or mom. You could also write it like this. I know I've come up short as your father and mother at the time, at times. At the time I thought I was doing good, but looking back, I realized I could have done better. I'm sorry. Now, let's talk. You might be in this situation. A lot of people are coming into the letter. One of your motivations or reasons to write this letter is you have some specific things that you want to apologize for or get off your chest. And so I want to make sure that if that is you, that you do that well. There's some things that you can do to really mess up an apology. Um, I do love this quote. Many people care more about being right than being happy. And so that's you right now. You're like, no, I'm right. Like I have nothing to apologize for. I don't know what to tell you. I guess just skip this whole section. But okay, so here's 5 ways to do an apology really well. Number one, you want to take responsibility. So whatever you're apologizing for, you got to own it. Everybody on this call, man, we have made our own decisions. Um, and so we've got to take responsibility for those. Now, you might be in a situation where you want to maybe like explain what has happened or explain the situation. Maybe like your dad was a certain way, and so you realize, man, I kind of was just like my dad. But now looking back, I realize, man, that wasn't good and that wasn't right. And so you're saying you're sorry for that. And that's okay if you want to give some context to the situation. You just have to be really careful. You do not want to come across as the victim. And so you really have to own it and take responsibility. You might even have somebody else read it just to make sure it doesn't have that tone of you being the victim. In this letter, this is to do an apology well. Number two, to do an apology well, for it to have the impact that you want it to have, you want to express regret. Not only is it powerful to get I'm sorry, but to take it a step further. Not only am I sorry, I regret it. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have done that. Oh man, that's powerful. Number three, be sincere by expressing that you understand. And so when you're able to communicate that you understand, it allows them to receive this apology like, oh, okay, she gets this. He gets this. Here's the thing. Everybody on this call wants to be understood. You want your spouse to understand you. You want your friends to just understand. Maybe you want your brother or sister to understand. You want your kids. Your kids want you to understand. If you guys are in business and maybe you're in sales, you know that the moment that you're able to communicate to the other person, hey, I see your problem. I get you. I understand what you're communicating to me. I got a solution. I can help you. What did you just, you closed the deal. You're like, okay, this person gets me. All of our kids just wants to be understood. And so um, if you're able to communicate some empathy, um, now you might be in a spot where it's like, man, it's really hard to understand. It's like I got one kid over here that they were in the exact same situation as this other kid, and they're fine, and this other is not. Well, we just have to know that everybody is different, and everybody experiences situations differently, and because of their personality or how they're wired, that's just how it is. And so something that like you had no trouble with, um, your children or your loved one, it might have been hard on them or might have been difficult. And so for you to really put yourself in their shoes and try to understand. Number four, to do an apology well, you want to own up to your part, not theirs. And so usually when somebody's apologizing, the other person probably has some things to apologize to. And I guarantee you there's some people on this call that your kids have done some things they need to apologize for. And I will say, for those of you that are dealing with some of that, I'm sorry. Um, but you don't want to bring any of that up on this call, on this apology. You'll mess up your whole letter if you start talking about things they need to apologize for. Okay, number five, you want to let go of the results. You cannot control their response. And really, this is true with this whole letter. Some of you are going to give this letter, and you're going to be a little nervous giving it to them because you don't know how they're going to respond. And some people, your loved ones or your children are going to, I mean, there's going to be some tears shed. There's going to be like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing ever. There was a dad in his 70s, not too long ago, gave it to his stepson and biological daughter. His stepson received it and message said, "This is the most meaningful thing anybody has ever done for me." Pretty cool. That felt good. His daughter, he didn't hear from her for a while. And so he messaged her and said, "Hey, did you get that letter that I sent you?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I've been meaning to read that." And so then a couple more weeks go by and still nothing. So I messaged her again and she said, "Oh, yeah, I read that letter, Dad. That was a good letter. Thanks." And that was all. And he told me, he said, "But I did not write that letter for her to pat me on the back and say, 'Hey, you're the best dad ever.' I wrote that letter for me. I wrote that letter um, because I knew I needed to say those things. And I'm going to trust that that letter, even though she can't appreciate it right now, that it's starting to work in her life. And it's affecting decisions that she's making right now, even though she maybe doesn't even know it. And maybe at a point in her life, she'll be able to appreciate it. The truth is, some of your children right now, maybe because of their age, their maturity level, or maybe they're just something's going on in their life. They can't fully appreciate it. And then some of you are like a lady I talked to recently, and she said, "I would give my right arm to have a letter like this from my dad." Some of you will not get to experience the joy that this letter and the fruit that this letter will bring in your loved one's life in this life. And you're going to be more like my dad because my dad didn't get to give me the letter. He didn't get to see my reaction. He didn't get to see the impact this letter had on my life this side of heaven. And some of you might be like that. Okay. Here's one thing you could write in this apology section that a lot of people do. Hey, if there's anything that you need to come talk to me about, I want you to know it's an open door. Please come talk to me. Now, if you write that, you got to be careful because they might actually come talk to you. And you got to be ready because if they come talk to you and you're like, "What? No, that's not what I meant when I said that." What are you going to do? You're just going to shut them down. I mean, it's probably just tip of the iceberg of what they wanted to share with you. But you got to be ready with humility to say, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that when I said that, when I did that, that it hurt you in that way. Please tell me more." Now, I'm not saying any of that is easy. It's not easy. I would say it takes some mental preparation to have some humility like that. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next three sections of the letter. And we're going to answer three questions that all of your children are asking. The first one is this: how do you really feel about me? Dad, mom, how do you really feel about me? And this is where you're going to communicate to your children that you love them, that your love for them is unconditional. There's nothing that they can do to earn your love. There's nothing that they can do to lose your love. When a person has this in their life, and especially from their mom and their dad, all the research has shown that they are more confident, that they feel valuable, they feel a part of something. I love the story that Kobe Bryant shared when he, about a year before he died in a helicopter crash, he said when he was uh, 12 years old, he was playing basketball in summer league, and he gets to the end of the summer and he didn't score a single point the entire summer. Kobe Bryant, and he said he was so frustrated, like so mad. But he said his dad walked up to him, put his arm around him, and said, "Kobe, I don't care whether you score 0 points or 60 points. I'm gonna love you no matter what." And Kobe said that was the best thing that his dad could have ever told him. Because it was in that moment that he was freed up just to go for it. Like he knew that he couldn't fail. He knew that no matter what happened, his dad was going to love him. And this is what you want your kids to know. They got to know this deep down. Um, you might just write something like this: no matter what happens tomorrow or the next day, I want you to know that I'm going to love you no matter what. This does not have to be a really long section. You can come really strong in just a couple sentences here. I was interviewing Terry Bradshaw last spring, and he was talking about his fatherhood journey. He was talking about his girls, but then he started talking about his dad. And he said that his dad was he said he loved his dad, and but he said his dad was a real hard man, worked hard. He said, I have no memories of playing catch with him in the front yard. But after he retired from the Steelers, he bought a ranch. And he said, my dad was into ranching. And so we bonded for the first time. And Bradshaw said he looked at his dad one day and said, Dad, I know that you love us, but I've never heard you say it. And I want to hear you say it. Took a lot of courage to say this. When Bradshaw was telling the story, he was laughing though, like as he does. And his dad looked at him and said, well, son, you know that I love you guys. And Bradshaw said, I know that you love us. I just want to hear you say it. And so his dad told him for the first time. And some of your children right now are saying, Mom, Dad, I know that you love me, but I just want to hear you say it. And I want to read it. And some of you right now are saying, no, no, like my kids know. My kids know that I love them. I've told them so many times. You know what your kids are saying right now? Tell me again. Tell me again how much you love me. And how much do you love me, Dad? How much do you love me, Mom? This isn't a one-time thing where we tell our kids, oh, I've told them before. No, no, we got to keep coming back. And this is the beautiful thing about it being written down, because when you read it like this, it's like, okay, they chose these words and they can come back to it. As you're trying to think through how to come really strong with your love, you might think through, okay, what's something, a potential lie that your child could tell themselves? And this might be something that you really value in your family, like a really good thing. Like what's something that you really value? Like maybe it's straight A's or success or going to college. I don't know what the thing is, but for you to just be able to say, hey, my love for you isn't based on whether you get straight A's. What's something that you could compare your love to? Something they know that you love. This could be maybe a hobby. This could be your job. There were some NFL guys working on this, and they were able to tell their children, hey, I just want you to know, like, I love my time in the NFL, but my love for you is infinitely more than being an NFL football player. And I love being your dad. You might get to a spot where you're like, shoot, I can't even come up with the words to describe how much I love my kids. It's okay to just say that. I don't even have the words to describe how much I love you. Okay, that's the I love you section. We're going to skip this video. All right. The next question that you all are going to answer for your children, and they're all asking it: Dad, Mom, are you proud of me? And this fits in perfect with Craig Melvin's interview in the book that he just wrote. But all of your children are asking this. And so we want to let them know that we're proud of them, not for what they've done. We're proud of them for who they are deep down. We want to focus on character. There was a guy that I met at a coffee shop a couple years ago in Springfield, Missouri, when I used to live there. And me and this guy just became friends. Like we hit it off. And this guy was retired. Had been very successful. He started a business. He sold a business. I knew what neighborhood he lived in. Had been successful. And one day, out of the clear blue, he just looks at me and he says, Blake, I still find myself every single day living to make my dad proud of me. He said, my dad died 20 years ago. And this guy never got that affirmation from his dad that all of us long for. The more I got to know him, and I got to hear about his family and his children, his adult children were not doing that great. And he didn't have the relationship with them that he had wanted, and he had a lot of regrets. And I was able to put two and two together. This man had neglected his family to build his business. And what was at the root of that? He was just trying to make his dad proud of him. And he thought if he was a little bit more successful, he made a little bit more money, maybe his dad would be proud of him. We do not want our children wondering what it takes to make us proud. We got to tell them. We got to let them know. As we are affirming our children and we're picking out some different character traits, we just have to know that what we affirm them for, that's what they'll repeat. Um, there was a dad working on this a couple of years ago, Tim Delaney. He's the vice president of the Arizona Cardinals. And I was talking through this with him as I helped him with his letter. And the next day, his daughter brought home a report card. And with this in the back of his mind, he called her over and said, Anna, I just want you to know, of course, I'm happy that you made straight A's. But here's what makes me the most proud. It's what your teacher wrote about you at the bottom. She said you're sweet and kind to your classmates. That's what makes Daddy the most proud. He said she started beaming like and smiling, shoulders held high as she walked away. I said, Tim, of course she did. It's like, you know what she was thinking? Number one, that felt good. Like, I want some more of that. And number two, oh, that's what makes Daddy proud? All right, that's what I'll keep doing. There was another dad working on this, and he said that they were a baseball family. And he said, man, my son hit the game-winning home run a couple different times, college baseball. He said, man, I was so proud. I said, well, absolutely. You can talk about this in the letter. But here's what you want to focus on. You want to focus on the character that it took to get to the spot of hitting the game-winning home run. You saw the hard work, the perseverance, the times that he could have given up, but he kept going. Because your son cannot hit the game-winning home run for the rest of his life. And he'll notice if that's the only time you affirm him is when he hits the game-winning home run, he's going to think, oh, like, it's going to be at some point potentially embittering to him. Like, oh man, I can't keep this up. Like, that's the only time dad's proud. Man, I'm going to find somebody else to make proud, someone who will affirm me. After this call, I'll send you all, there'll be an email coming and I'll put some character traits in there for you to think through and look at, and you can identify your children within your children to help you affirm them. One dad said it like this: Christian, I am proud of the individual that you are. You think independently and critically. You don't just think selfishly, but you consider others in your thought process. I am proud of you because you stay true to yourself, even though it may not be popular with others. How cool is this? Christian probably didn't even know that he was an independent thinker. He probably didn't even know he was a critical thinker, but his dad just pointed out to him. And I guarantee you, he's not the most independent thinker or the most critical thinker, but he's going to continue to grow in it. So this section of the letter is very much about catching your children doing the right thing and saying, yep, keep doing that. And it's so easy for me to, when I know when my kids are messing up and to let them know. This happens about every night around bedtime. I'm like, come on, get to bed. And it's really easy to tell them when they're messing up. But when they do it right, hey, that right there, that was good. Keep doing that. Okay. This next section of the letter is we're going to answer another question. Do you believe in me? Dad, Mom, do you believe in me? And you're going to write something like this. I want you to know that I believe in you. No matter what happens in life or what curveball is thrown your way, you're going to make it. My mom has done this really well for me in life. There's been a couple times where my mom looked at me point blank and she said, Blake, I don't know what you're going to end up doing in life, but I know that you're going to be successful. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. Come on, dude. That was your mom. Like, of course, your mom said that to you. But here's the thing. My mom believed it. I could hear it in her voice. And so because she believed it, I believed it. When we started this 3.5 years ago, you can imagine the insecurity that I felt. I had never helped anyone write a legacy letter. And so I'm like, man, can I do this? I had a business coach, Keith, and Keith believed in me. And Keith kept reassuring me, Blake, you can do this. You're going to figure it out. Keep going. You can do it. And so for that first year, man, I had to borrow Keith's confidence. I was living off of Keith's confidence in me. And so this can be really difficult when our children are not living up to their potential and they're making a lot of mistakes. But let me say this, we're never going to shame our children into who they can become, but we can believe for them that they're going to get there. Now, they might make it without us, but if they do, it's because somebody else came in their life and believed in them. But we want it to be us. So this section of the letter is very much about you looking into the future. Your children right now, no matter what age they are, their heads down, they're just living life, maybe going to school, maybe they're working their job, whatever it is. And man, they don't have time to get up and really think about the future. But you're going to do it for them. You're going to see what could be true. And you're going to believe that what could be true is going to happen, knowing that along the way, like mistakes are going to be made, there's going to be hard times, they're going to mess up, but you're going to believe that those things are going to refine them and help them. This is going to bring hope for those tough situations. And then also you want to set yourself up in this section of the letter for those moments where they mess up so that they can come to you and that you can be on their team and you can help them through it. Doesn't mean that you have to be okay with whatever mistake they made, but you're going to help them through it. And the reason that this is so important in our day and age, um, because we live in a time where I would say shame is at an all-time high. Um, we have the potential and the opportunity to make some mistakes where the whole world can find out. When we were growing up, man, you might make a mistake and like a couple of people would find out. And now a picture can be taken, something can be said online, and man, the whole school just found out, or everybody in their world. And so this is one reason why anxiety and depression and suicide is at an all-time high. Because the shame can just feel so overwhelming. And so we want to create a situation where, hey, you can come talk to me. I am on your team. I believe in you. Okay. We're we're in Kansas City. We're partnering with an organization called Big Brother, Big Sister. And I love this organization because they bring mentors alongside some young people who don't have like a lot of times a dad or a mom in their life, and they don't have anyone that believes in them. And then this person comes along and they're in life, but also writing this letter and they're believing in them. And that makes sense to us, right? Oh my gosh, yes, this is life changing for this kid to have somebody, an older person, believing in them. It's life changing for all of our children too, to have us believing in them. Okay. So when a person has those three things answered, I love you, I'm proud of you, I believe in you. All the research shows that they're set up to be more successful in life, be more resilient. They can make it through tough times. Um, and then they have more emotional intelligence. And so we know from research, like it's way more important to have higher EQ than IQ. You could be the smartest person in the room, but if you're not self-aware, if you can't self-regulate, if you can't talk to other people, it doesn't matter how smart you are. And so you're helping your children grow in emotional intelligence. We talk a lot about in our culture about coddling our children. We're not trying to coddle our children. Coddling your children is looking at them in their immaturity and saying, "Yep, you're fine down there. Just stay down there where you're at." We're not trying to do that. We're trying to call them up. We're trying to call them up out of their immaturity into who they can be. And that's what we're doing by writing this letter, by answering these questions. Okay, let's talk about the memory section. I love the memory section. And let me say this. I really see the memories as almost bonus points to the letter because you could have a pretty strong letter and a really impactful letter without any memories. You don't have to have any memories. And so almost every memory that you put in there, though, is like another bonus point. So every time you're able to put in there, oh, remember when this or remember that. Oh, man, it's so sweet to get. But I do want to show you how powerful these memories can be. The story, I love this quote. The stories we tell ourselves shape our lives. They shape who we believe we are, and this belief translates into who we become. And so some of our children right now, well, all of them are telling themselves a story. And some of the stories they're telling themselves are not serving them. And so we have an opportunity to rewrite some of those stories and reframe some of the stories. I love the story of Tua Tagovailoa. If you are a football fan, you know that he won a national championship at Alabama, gets drafted in the first round by the Dolphins. His first couple years, he plays horrible. And he gets to the point where he looks in the mirror one day. He shared this in an interview. He said, "Man, I suck. Like I suck. Like I'm just not a good NFL quarterback." And in that moment, Tua began to tell himself a story. Well, they get a new coach, Mike McDaniels, and he comes in. He does something pretty incredible. He takes 75 of Tua's best plays, puts them into a video, and makes Tua watch them. And he watches it multiple times. He gets to the end of it, and he says, "I can do this. I'm a good quarterback. I can do it." Coach helped him rewrite the story. And over the last couple of years, he's been statistically one of the best quarterbacks in the league and just got a fat new contract. Could you imagine if his coach made him watch 75 of his worst plays in the NFL and said, "Why did you make that throw? Why did you make that read? You're better than that. Why did you call that audible?" It wouldn't have worked. I would argue that Tua may not even be in the league anymore. Okay. So I recommend coming up with 4 to 5 different memories. You can make a list of memories. And so you could just have a section of memories. Hey, when I think about you, here's my 5 favorite memories or the 5 first memories that come to my mind. Or you could decide, you know what, I'm going to use my memories into different sections of the letter. Maybe you have a perfect memory for the intro section or the I love you or that I'm proud of you. Maybe that memory of the moment you knew that they were going to be born or the moment they were born. Um, Maybe you have a memory like that. Now, on these memories, it doesn't necessarily have to be a story. Like you might just say, "Here's my favorite memories." Like one dad wrote, that time, that trip we went on out west, watching you play Little League baseball. Um, going to do, I can't remember what else he said. Maybe you just have a list of memories like that. Maybe there is one or two or all of them, there's more of a story. Um, Maybe there's a negative story, like something your children are telling themselves, and you saw maybe there was a failure but you saw something completely different. Yeah, they failed, but you saw what happened after that and how they picked themselves up and they kept going. And so you can focus on that. I have a memory that I wrote in my letter. I looked out in my backyard and I saw my kids playing on the playground. And in this moment, from inside my living room, inside the window, I just started smiling so big. And I got so much joy. And I wrote this down. I knew I was gonna would forget it if I didn't. But the reason I did is I just wanted them to know, look, you got a dad who gets joy out of just watching you play on the playground. Maybe you have a memory that communicates, I like you. It's, oh man, it's so powerful to get, I love you. But not only do I love you, I like you. Oh man, that's powerful to get from somebody. And it could just be something simple. I enjoy when the times we go to a restaurant together and it's just me and you or someone on one time. Okay, let's move to the next section of the letter. And I hope some of you just are able to just your brainstorm memories that this is just a really fun exercise as you're going through a memory lane. Maybe you're looking at old pictures and it just brings you some joy thinking through these memories. Okay. Now the advice section. And so in the advice section, we are sharing with our children some wisdom. All of us have lived a longer life. We have some wisdom. We have some things that we could share with them that can help them make some decisions. Like they're looking to us, like, hey, how can we help them? Um, Let me say this though, if some of you do go on to write this letter to your spouse, and a lot of people do, you might take it easy on the advice section. And it's not going to be received the same way. um, I was talking with a dad a couple years ago, and he told me that his dad had passed away recently. And he said, "Man, I was at the funeral, and these guys were coming up to me, and they're like, 'Man, your dad was unbelievable. He was incredible. He was such a mentor to me, and I wouldn't be in my career if it wasn't for him. Like he was always pouring into me.'" And this guy shared with me, he said, "Man, I got more and more mad with each person that came up to me because he was like, 'What the heck, Dad? Like you're helping all these other people. You've mentored, you've been intentional with them, but you never did that for me.'" So we don't want that to be true of us. And so I recommend, coming up with 4 or 5 pieces of advice. Some of you could write a whole novel here, a whole book of advice. Um, but we're really not trying to do that here. And I know it's your letter, so you can have as many as you want. Um, but know that for each piece of advice that you share, you water down the previous advice. Um, and so I just say, come up with 4 or 5. Um, it doesn't have to be um, something really profound. Number one, know that you're not going to come up with anything new under the sun. Like all the advice is already out there. Go to the bookstore right now. I'm looking behind Richard. He's got a ton of books on that bookshelf. There's all kinds of advice in these books. And so you're not going to come up with anything new. And then something simple can just be really life changing. There was a dad that came up to me after I was speaking, and he's 75 years old. And he said, "Man, I'll never forget some advice my dad gave me 20 years ago." He said it was my wedding day, second marriage. And he said that his dad encouraged him to not go to bed angry. He said, "Work it out before you go to bed." And this guy proudly told me, he said, "Man, for the last 20 years, I have not gone to bed angry." Now I was doing a live workshop a couple weeks ago, and this guy shouted out from the crowd, "Are you telling us that he never went to bed?" um, so, I mean, he's married. He had opportunities here to be angry. But here's the question. I've heard that advice before. I have not lived this advice out. Why did he live out this advice? Number one, it's because of who it was that told it to him. Someone that he loved. It was his dad. But here's the real reason why this advice stuck. It's because of what his dad told him right beforehand. His dad walked up to him and said, "Son, I just want you to know how much I love you." And in that moment, this 55-year-old man turned into a 9-year-old boy. "Dad, you love me? What else you got for me?" And then his heart was opened And his dad shared this advice to an open heart, and it stuck. Where is the advice section in your legacy letter? It's not section one. We're not coming in section one. We're not coming in hot with some advice. It's after you've shared an apology, communicate, I love you, I'm proud of you, I believe in you, shared some special memories, and then you're going to share this advice to an open heart. At this point, you've won their heart. And so now this advice has a better chance of sticking. Now you might write something like this. In life, you're going to face many good times, but you'll also face many trials and challenges. I want to share with you a few things that I've learned and tried to live by that will help you as you navigate life. Something like that. Now, you might be in a spot where you're like, man, I don't know if my kids want to hear any advice from me. Like anytime I try to share something, I get the eye roll. And if that has not happened to you yet, it will happen to you. It's happened to all of us. And so there's a couple things that might be going on. We have to be honest with ourselves. Well, the first one, maybe your kid is just being a butthead. Like that could absolutely be true. The second thing, and this is where you have to be honest with yourself, you may not have earned the right to share some advice with them. I love the phrase, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. And some of you right now are like, no, no, I care a lot. Like, what do you mean? Like, these are my kids. Like, I care a lot. That's not the phrase. The phrase is until I know how much you care. And so that's what we're doing here with this legacy letter. You're letting them know how much you care. That being said, if you're in that situation and you feel any kind of uneasiness about this advice section, a lot of people write it like this. Hey, I've made a lot of mistakes and I've learned a lot over the years. There are many things I would do differently, knowing what I know now. Here are a few things I would share with my 20-year-old self if I could go back in time. With my kindergarten self, with the day I got married, with the day I became a mom or a dad, or you pick the time, it doesn't matter. But now you write this advice section to yourself, not to them. And so it's just received a little bit differently. You're not pointing the finger at them, you're pointing at yourself. And so it will be received better, but they still hear it. They still hear the advice. You're still influencing them. So here are the three questions you want to answer. What is the advice? How did you come up with the advice? And how will your life be different if you follow this advice? What is the advice? How'd you come up with it? So how'd you come up with it? Maybe there's a story there. Like, and maybe it's an opportunity for you to show some humility. Maybe you learn the hard way. And then how will your life be different? Real quickly, just a couple categories that you could be thinking through. You might use this section of the letter to share your core values. And you just say, hey, these are the core values that are true, that I've tried to live by, or that are true of our family. And then you just write them out. You might have some advice around the mindset that you use to approach each day, or maybe a gratitude, having an attitude of gratitude. I don't know. Maybe you have some relationship advice. Who you hang around is who you'll become. Maybe you have some financial advice. There's some things you would do differently financially if you went back. Success. Your children would probably never actually say this or ask this out loud, but everybody's asking it. Hey, how do I know if I'm successful? Like, what does it take to be successful in life? And so for you to just spell it out and say, hey, this is what success looks like in our family. Technology advice. I'm sure everybody on here, your parents gave you some technology advice when you were younger, right? None of your parents did that. But the truth is technology, while it can be a very powerful tool, it can also be really destructive. And it's messing with our minds and it's messing us up in our relationships. And so maybe you have some technology advice. Maybe you have some health advice, some things you would do differently if you could go back. Maybe you have some spiritual advice. And if you are a person of faith, I highly recommend putting some spiritual advice in here. I knew when I read that letter, and my dad, had things about God, the Bible, different Bible verses. Like I wasn't surprised by any of that. Um, but to have it written down and for me to read. Maybe you have some advice about having about work ethic. Maybe some advice about family. There was a guy working on this, and he's had, man, my adult son and adult daughter, they both became parents, and they're kind of drifting apart from each other. Their personality, like they're kind of different, and just how they see the world, they're different. But he said, I'm not going to be here forever, and I know that they're going to be better off if they have a stronger relationship. So we use this section of the letter to really encourage them to strengthen that relationship. You might have this question: what if I feel like a hypocrite? And couple of things. Number one, you are a hypocrite because all this advice that you're sharing, like you have not perfectly lived it out. um, but don't let this stop you from sharing some good advice. You could just simply say this: I haven't always done the best at living out this advice, but when I have, my life has been better. Okay, now you're going to come to the closing paragraph. So at this point, your children or your loved ones, they've read a pretty amazing letter from you. And so, how do you close it down? Closing paragraph, you're really just summing up what was in the intro paragraph, but then you're also going to answer this question: what are your hopes for the relationship going forward? And so, think a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, if you could draw it up anyway, what would your relationship look like with whoever you're writing this letter to? And spell it out for them. This letter, this whole letter has been about us clearly communicating. We're not trying to make them read between the lines or keep them guessing. We want to let them know. And for some of you, this answering this question is going to take a lot of courage, because what you hope is true is not true today. And you're not for sure that they want what you want. So you're going to have to put your heart out there. You're going to have to be courageous in writing this. But this is what we do. Like this is what we do as parents and as we go to battle for our family and as we go to battle for our children. Also, in this closing paragraph, you can share your experience writing this letter. There might have been some moments where you were crying, had tears, and might have had some joy. Um, it might be incredibly difficult. It might be hard. You might share how long it took you to write this letter. You might also share any fears. You might have some fears, like a lot of people do. Like you've written some things, and you're not sure how they're going to receive it, and you know how you want them to receive it. And so you can write that. Just tell them, hey, if there's something that you're afraid that they might receive it the wrong way. And then you're going to come to the last line of the letter. And everybody on here is going to have a last line. I call this the legacy line. So if there was one line, one sentence that you want to be repeated in your children's mind, what would it be? Because it's the last line of my dad's letter is the one that I repeated more than any other. And I've, for so many different times, I've broken apart different parts of this line. And at times really meditated on it. It's stuck with me. And so, what would that be for you? Now, some of you might be thinking, shoot, man, I got this whole letter to write. Now you got me, I got to write this perfect last line. That's not what we're doing here. You don't have to, don't overthink it. Um, you can think about it, but don't overthink it. Trust your gut. Whatever you come up with is going to be good. Nobody on this call is going to have a bad last line. So whatever you come up with for your last line, your legacy line, it's going to be good. Okay, let's talk real quickly about giving the letter, and then we'll answer some questions if anybody has any. Um, but think some people come into this because of my story. They think, okay, this letter is for when I pass. My dad was going to give me that letter that weekend. He knew that his 19-year-old son needed this letter. So I encourage you to give this letter as soon as you can. If your children are not currently in a situation, they're about to be in one, and they're going to be better off with this letter. Some of you are going to send it like a dad recently sent it in an email and to his 12-year-old son who lived in a different house, divorce situation. He woke up the next day and his son posted about him on Instagram. He said, my son has never posted about me on Instagram. And he said it was a dad appreciation post about how much he loved his dad. It was awesome. One dad said, man, it was a graduation party. I read it to everybody in the room, to my daughter in front of everybody. Uh, some of you are going to send it in the mail. There's some of you will decide to get something along with the letter and give a gift, or you might get a little wooden box, or we have some things on in our online store that you can some leather envelopes that you can give with it. You might give some jewelry, some things like that. You don't have to do any of that. Just some people do. And so I hope you hear what you're hearing me say is there's no wrong way to give this letter. Some people give it like a reverse Father's Day or Mother's Day gift or a birthday or Christmas or a time that you would give a gift. And some just give it just whenever. So there's really no wrong way to do that. Okay. Let's talk about a couple things real quick and kind of like what's next for Legacy Letter Challenge and where we're going, and then the role that you play. We're in a mission to help 1 million dads and moms write at least one legacy letter. Um, I don't know how long it's going to take. Um, I believe um, God has the power to make this happen in the next 7 days if you wanted to. I just know that I'm called to help people do this. And so we're going to be faithful every day to go do this and to help people write their legacy letter. The biggest role that you can play is to finish your letter. And the second role that you can play, and I'd like to ask you, is to invite your friends. And so some of you are on this call because somebody invited you. And every one of us right now can think of somebody, at least one person who would be on this call, who needs to write this legacy letter. They just don't know about it. Or maybe they know about it, but they need a little bit of encouragement. Like, no, you need to do this. I don't know them. I can't go invite them, but you can. And I gotta tell you, and I've talked to enough people that it feels pretty good when you've invited someone and you played a part in someone writing their legacy letter. And even if the small part was just inviting them to this, oh man, it feels good. And for some of you that are business owners who are providing it for your clients or for your employees, like, man, you know what that feeling is to provide this opportunity for them. And so I would love for everybody to just take that link right, legacyletter.com/workshop, and send it to your friends. We'll be on here 2 Thursdays from now. And so you guys are welcome to come back to any of the workshops. A lot of people come back. I know Ryan Rink is on the call right now. He's been in these things like 4 or 5 times, and each time he's working on a new letter. So come back and work on a letter. And then the next thing is, and this is not for everybody on this call, but some of you have the ability or the desire to pay it forward. Some of you are here today because someone paid it forward for you. We really honestly, as you've done this for the last 3.5 years, we've never just like offered this workshop for free. Like it was always somebody paid for it, or you had to, pay $150 or $200 to come to the workshop. And then honestly, it was like 6 weeks ago, it's like, man, I don't want to do that anymore. Like if someone wants to sign up, let's sign up. And then some of the people will decide to pay it forward. And then and there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes. I do this full time. I have a staff team, and so it takes a lot to even reach more people. And so if you feel led to pay it forward, um, no, there are some extra perks for paying it forward, and so you do get some extra resources. We'll send you some example letters. You get the recording of the workshop, and then you get a weekly email until you finish, an encouragement email. And so that's if you do $50. Now, I will say we have not, since we started this, we have not had someone do a $2,500 deal. Don't pay it forward. So I'm looking, I don't know if that person is on the call today, but if you're here, thank you in advance. Okay. And if you're a business person, would love to talk to you about doing it in your business, or I will come to your town and I do a lot of live workshops. And so we'd love to come do it live for your church or business or whatever it might be. So feel free to, I'd love to talk to you if that's you. Hey, let's talk about our sponsor tonight real quickly, Giftology. Man, I love the people over at Giftology, John Ruhlin, Mike Monroe, and their team. Man, they are just like right on track with us as far as relationships. And those of you that are in business, they will help you strengthen those relationships. They'll help you get everyone in here knows that referrals is the way you want to go in business. And so these people are just, John and his team are just like experts in helping you get more referrals and strengthen those relationships in a great way. And so, uh, if you go, they are offering a free course. And so you can go to that course and go through it. And so I would love for some people, if applies to you, please go sign up for their course and we'll let them know. We send them some people. Uh, okay. And then, okay. So I've been talking for a long time here. Do we have any questions? Does anybody have any questions about anything you want to ask in front of everybody, in front of all your best friends here tonight? Miss Linda, Creston, you guys got anything? Stephen Colson, you could put it in the chat or you can take yourself off mute and ask it. One question I get is, man, am I typing this thing or is it handwritten? So my dad's letter, does anybody want to guess? It was typed. And I was really grateful that it was typed because I could read it. And so you can't go wrong on this. I totally get like the handwriting and wanting to see the handwriting, but um, here's my answer. Whatever gets you to a finished letter the fastest. And so for some of you, it's typed. For some of you, it's handwritten. Your kids are not over there right now. Oh my gosh, I hope they choose this one correctly. Is it going to be typed or is it being handwritten? They're like, no, no. They were here right now. They'd say, just finish the letter. And so you could do a typed and then the last couple sentences handwritten. You could do it that way. Richard asks, has anyone done this as a video? The answer is yes. And so you could absolutely do it as a video. And so a couple things, if it's easy, and you might be asking this because it's easier to do it as a video. You could record it, do a video, and then it's so easy with the transcribing services that are out there. You could transcribe it, and then you have the letter. Um, so you have both. But I also do encourage everyone, once you finish your letter, to record yourself. So there is a video. Man, I would love to have a video of my dad reading his letter. But it was 2003. The technology was not that easy to be able to do that. But in 2024, it's pretty easy. So you can easily just hold up the selfie camera. They can hear your voice, even if you plan on living a long, long time from now. But for them to be able to look back and see, oh, that's what mom or that's what dad looked like, and that's his voice. Thank you for all the nice messages that are coming in. Any questions? I you guys are welcome to come off mute if anybody wants to ask anything here. I usually have every call I've done, at least one person's come off mute. So we got to keep the streak going. Somebody, Daryl, what you got?
Yeah, hey, thank you. I've been looking forward to this for so long. I've heard about this 3 weeks ago, and I've been just so excited about it because when I heard about it, I've never heard anything like this before. And it just so happened when a good friend of mine read the legacy letter his dad wrote to him. and it just
Oh,
blew me away. His dad wrote this letter to him when he was a few months old, and his
hmm.
dad was 26. This gentleman's 77 years old,
Oh,
and it
wow.
absolutely blew me away. And I go, I need to do this. So my question is, I have three grown children and four grandchildren. I was thinking of writing a letter to the grandchildren too. What do you say? What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
you got to write a letter to the grandchildren, as you know, and like grandparents have such a special and important place. Like I had four amazing grandparents that have really shaped who I am today. I try to get my kids around their grandparents as much as possible. And then I'll share this. I got a letter. My granny, my dad's mom, wrote me letters. She died at 94 a few years ago, and this is last year. I'm kind of embarrassed about this story. But it was a Sunday night and my wife and I were both in the closet and I said some things that I kind of got mad at her and I said some things I shouldn't have. Well, what happened was is she was taking some things from her side of the closet and putting it on my side of the closet. And I was like, why? That's your stuff. And I got mad at her and I think it's because I was stressed out thinking about the week. And so then, okay, I kind of left the room and I came upstairs to my office and I'm kind of piddling around and I see this letter that I hadn't seen in years. And I pull it out. It's from my grandmother, Granny. And I start to read this letter and she has shared like her favorite memories of me. It's like 2 pages long. And then I get to the last memory, and she says, and my favorite memory is seeing you be an amazing, godly husband and loving your wife. And the hairs on the back of my neck just stood up. I was like, oh shoot, I know what I gotta do. So I went downstairs and apologized. And I'm not good at apologizing. And but that day, my granny from her grave made my marriage better. And so to answer your question, Daryl, yep.
Thank you.
Great.
Awesome. Good. Good. Thank you.
Grace, you got something? Grace?
Is it okay if I share something?
I don't know what you're about to share, but we'll
Well,
go for it.
semi-related to this. I didn't know about this, but my son has a 5-year-old boy, and he bought him a Yodo. Does anybody know what a Yodo is?
No.
It's kind of like the tape recorders back when we were younger,
Hmm.
but it's the modern thing for children, and they put a little card in this thing, and it tells the story. And the idea came to me that I should tell them stories of the family and stick it on the card. And then my grandson can listen to the card and find out more about his family.
Oh yeah.
But with the letter, I could write him a letter and then read it to him, and he could put it in the little box and he can hear me reading it.
I love that, Grace. And we have a relationship with Shelly Murray with forever.com, and I think this is the best place to digitally store your letter and your photos. But they have so many different capability where you can make a photo book. Some people do this. And then they want to put the letter in the photo book, but then you can put a QR code and it links to either your audio or your video. And then there are people that kind of along the same lines, Grace. They have like those photo album or yeah, a, a photo deal that's video, and so then their kids can walk around and play the video. And they had some kids that were special needs, the people I'm thinking of, and so they couldn't really read, but they were able to listen to the video.
So what
So
was the name of the what's the address?
um, I'll put it in the email out for
Okay.
forever.com.
Okay.
Because you're going to want to use the link we send out because it's specifically with Shelly Murray, and you get like 3 GB free, and then she'll help you as well. So she's amazing. She's great. Lives up in Pennsylvania. Um, okay, Creston, you sent me a direct message about connecting with John O'Leary. And so some people might be here because of John, and if you know who he is, John, amazing guy, motivational speaker, but he was burned in his house when he was a child. And so he's overcome that, had like a 1% chance of living. Chris and I was on his podcast. We recorded it. It came out today. It actually
Oh,
came
no
out
way.
today. Yeah.
Good.
And then he's doing a private workshop
Perfect.
with him 2 Mondays from now. So you can come back
Oh,
on May 6th.
good. Well, I'm glad that you're connected with him. You guys jive very, very similar. So that's
Well,
a
and
compliment.
and uh and some of you are here because of giftology, and John Rulin and Mike and his team, Mike Monroe, like they're the ones who connected me to John O'Leary. And so again,
Oh,
like back to giftology, like they're just, the team is great and so giving and have given to me. And so anyway, Preston, where do you live?
Houston, Texas.
Ah, Houston, down there with all the, I don't want to talk about it, pollution and all the, but I have some great friends down in Houston, and they went to Arkansas with me,
Cool.
and I grew up in Allen, Texas, so I'm a Texan as well.
There you go. That's good. That's good. Well, you did a great job tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Uh, does anybody else have anything? Anybody good? Cameron, I see you got your kids there with you, man. They know what you're doing.
Yeah,
So
they're curious. I've been sitting in here for a couple hours and they're like, Dad, when are you gonna come and read to me? When are you gonna come and read to me? So thanks so much for putting this on. I appreciate it.
well, man, I had to step away from my family tonight, as well. So we're all kind of, we had to sacrifice a little bit, but it's worth it.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, guys.
All right,
Have a
glad that
great
you're
evening.
here. Okay, well, it's 9:03 where I'm at. Um,
I have a question.
oh yeah. Oh, where are you? Yeah, who wants to ask that?
My hand's up. I'm the one with pink hair. Um, so would this work for a sibling? I mean, I know we talked about kids and grandkids, but can this work for siblings and in that relationship?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of people have written to their sibling as well. Um, I don't want to ask too well. So is this a situation where you're trying to maybe repair a relationship, or you're just wanting to write them and let them know how much you love them?
Actually, he works for me. So we have a relationship, but I know there's just I don't know. We grew up in the same home, and you would never know it. So I want to do it more for an encouragement, something he can, that I am proud of him and the man he's become, and I guess a physical thing he can have.
Yeah, I uh I love being able to tell my brother and sister. Now you got me thinking, shoot, I need to actually write them a letter, and I haven't done it. And but my brother, um, my dad would be so proud of him. And he's on the spectrum, but he I hesitate to say that on a recording here, but he has a full-time job, and he works he's a janitor at school, and he lives by himself, and we didn't think he'd ever live by himself. And I'm like, man, my dad would be so proud of him if he was here. And then this was pretty cool. My sister got married a couple years ago, and she called me and said, this is like 2 years ago, and she said, Blake, I'm getting married. And she'd only been dating this guy like 4 or 5 months, but she was 36, so that age you can figure it out pretty quickly. And she said, I want you to marry us, will you officiate the wedding? And I said, well, let me check my schedule. Are the Razorbacks playing that weekend? And and they actually were. I was like, you're scheduling your wedding on a Razorback home game? I said, but I guess I'll go. And I officiated this wedding, and it was such an emotional thing because to see my sister walking down the aisle, and my dad wasn't there. And I know she would have loved to have my dad there. I know my dad would have loved to have been there. But I was able to take words from my dad's letter and then bring it into the ceremony and to bless my sister and her new husband, Matt. That was pretty cool.
I want to, my father's in the nursing home, not doing great, and I want to help him write this letter for my brother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you might have
So
to
that,
sit there like with the pen in your hand
oh
and
yeah,
really
absolutely. He's got
give some
Parkinson's. He
promptings.
can't,
Yeah.
he can't write, but I think that would also be to help him write this legacy letter.
Oh, good for you for being able to do that. That's awesome. Okay, does anyone else asking a question? Somebody that I missed? Okay, I will close with this. I just want to say thank you all for being here. Every letter that's written matters. I know like we're on this mission for 1 million. It's like, but man, behind every single letter that's written is a person, is a family, is a child. And so every letter matters. Your letter matters. Your life matters. Like I believe your life deserves a legacy letter. But then also every letter does honor my dad's legacy. And so thank you for helping me honor my dad. Okay. Thank you all. We'll see you. Bye bye.